Yo, what's up, guys? Um, Welcome back to another episode of the Father Built Podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Peacock. This podcast is all about building up fathers in holiness, healthiness, and happiness, aiming to give fathers the tools to build their house of legacy. Like I said, I'm your host, Bobby Peacock, and I appreciate y'all listening in. So first of all, I want to apologize about last week and not getting the podcast off. Was really hoping to, but there was us, and you can probably hear it in my voice, but a personal situation that came up unexpectedly, and so yeah, we I had to cancel last week's podcast, but I'm gonna try to get through this podcast, and so yeah, I'm just gonna speak to it. So with a heavy heart, uh, a good friend of mine went missing. He had a wife. Uh, he had three kids, and it's difficult. And um, we had to form search parties, and uh, still nothing has come up. And so it's very difficult. This was a guy that I would say was a Sioux Falls staple, is a Sioux Falls staple. Um, and he's a good friend of mine as well. And so it's just been difficult. And so just really trying to emotionally support, um, you know, his family and his wife and her family. Um, and so it's just a lot. Um, and so yes, what I'm going to say to that, but um, and even as like I am recording this podcast as of right now, there is a man in the middle of downtown Sioux Falls, South Dakota, um, standing on a ledge of a parking garage and contemplating whether he should jump or not. Not only that, um, there's been some other stuff that has been happening. Sioux Falls missing children, uh, a couple of other missing men in South Dakota, and it honestly, it just breaks my heart. And just to be real, raw, and transparent, I didn't want to record this podcast right now. It's 11:57 at night. And I felt like I have to record this. I have to walk through my emotions, process my emotions. Um, I mean, even there was a young man that stood outside of a school a couple days ago with an AR. And so the state of like my city, it just seems like it is in shambles right now. And for those of y'all that are listening, I would request that you pray for Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Not only that, but obviously it's a political year as well, um, and we have people fighting on both sides, and there's drama, and there's people that are hurting, and so I would challenge y'all, and even I'm challenging myself in this too, to actively be praying for our nation, be praying for our world, be praying for people who are hurting. And I would say not only just be praying, but that is the least that you should do. The other thing I would say is that you need to check on your friends. Check on the people that are close to you and make sure um, that they're okay. And really have some of those tough conversations. If you have a friend that's like really walking through it and going through it, like check on them. I would say this too. The thing that just like hurts me right now with my friend that is missing, the Lord put him on my heart a couple months ago, um, multiple times, and didn't reach out and check on him. And so don't lose sight of your friends. Don't lose sight of the people who are in your corner or you're in their corner. Do life with them. Hold strong to them. Check in on them. And it's just like something that like is just mind blowing to me is um like tonight I had to go downtown to make sure that this was not my friend. And I was talking with the police officer, and I had another friend that was downtown, um and I walked into another bar, and it's just so crazy that there's this very, very difficult situation that is happening where there's a man on a ledge and there's police and there's ambulance and fire trucks and um, the trailer where, they're trying to figure out how to negotiate with this dude. And you walk down the street and you go up in a bar, and it's like life is just happening. And yeah, people are noticing this, but yet life is still happening. Life is still moving on. Life is, there's like no connection. And like it just broke my heart that there are people out there that are so broken, that are so hurt, that they don't know what else to do. And it breaks my heart to see that. I'm trying to pace myself within this podcast episode. It's difficult to see people hurting. Don't be that friend where you're looking at it and you're saying it was too late. I was doing some research about missing people, and this is from 2021, and I did kind of like an average to that there are 521, or let's just, we're gonna round up, but there's 522,000 people missing that go missing every year. Now, some of them, maybe it's 24 hours and they're found, or 48 hours and they're found. But the average per day is 1,430 people go missing every single day. Now, if we want to break that down in genders, about 39% of the people that go missing, or missing persons reported, sorry, I'm tired, are males. And then females is 61%. A lot of these are juveniles under the age of 18. And a lot of this information comes from the FBI and CIC missing persons website. And then the Name Us official website as well. And it's crazy to think that so many people go missing, whether they're grabbed, whether they're just like, I'm done with this life and I just need to move on because of hurt, because of pain, because of frustrations. It's just, it's sad. Now, in regards to, and we've talked about this before, I think about what's going on downtown as I'm talking to you with suicide. Man, men are about 1.8 times more likely to die of suicide than women. It's just crazy. Like in 2021, in the United States, there was 48,183 recorded suicides in the United States. Now, out of that, and this is just alarming, approximately 38,800 of those deaths were among men. That's around 80% of the suicides in America. 80% of the suicides in America are men. We have to check on each other. We have to take our mental health serious. For our community, for us, for our families, for our spouses, for our children. We have to stop doing this thing of lone wolfing it and trying to be Superman for everybody else. I was in a conversation yesterday, literally checking on one of my friends who's so close to this situation in regards to my friend missing, and we were just genuinely talking and holding each other accountable, because we both know that we have pastors' hearts. We love big and love deep. And it's easy for us to carry the weight of other people and put things off to the side. And it was so heartwarming to have that conversation and just say, man, like, you don't have to carry this weight alone. I don't have to carry this weight alone. I think about how there are so many men out there that do not have the right friends in their corner. And it's crazy when poop hits the fan. It's crazy to think about who are the people that are going to show up. And I can tell without a doubt in my life, I know there's at least 12 men that are going to show up. 12 men that are going to show up when poop hits the fan. And whether that's help me, whether that's help my family, my son, or show up for my son. But it took me a moment of contemplating taking my life. I'm going to get super personal here with y'all. In 2022, there was a moment in my life where there was a lot of people that were walking out of my life than walking in my life. And I remember I was sitting on my bed, and I'm a weapon guy, and my weapon was on the nightstand. And I pick it up, still in the holster, and I look at it and I contemplate. I take it out of the holster. My son is sleeping in the next room. And he makes a noise. And it was just a moment that I snapped out of it. And it's like I owe my life to my son. Because if he didn't wake up or make that noise, I don't know where I would be today. So I went to his room, and I just started crying as he's sleeping peacefully, and I just look at him and I'm like, I can't let you do this life without me. And I share that story because, one, not a lot of people know what I went through. There's a couple of my close friends that know. And I remember, I think it was like that next morning or that next couple days later, I had a friend, really close friend of mine, one of my inner three, come and check on me because I wasn't calling him. And he took me out to dinner, and he helped me carry the weight. It's so to be able to have friends in your corner that are going to show up and help you carry the weight. Those are the friends that you need. The thing with finding friends is that you have to lay out the expectations. You have to be like, hey, I want you to be my friend, and this is what being a friend looks like. And sometimes I'm in conversations where I'm like, hey, I want to be your friend, but being your friend looks like this for me. What does it look like for you? And more men need that in their life. Something that, in light of this whole situation that I've been really walking through as well, is confrontation. A pastor, friend of mine, says it this way: hurt people hurt people. And I'm realizing that there are a lot of hurt people out there that are very reactive instead of responsive. Um, and it's hard. And before I jump into that, something that I want to say for those of y'all that are listening to this podcast, for those of y'all that are really, really struggling, um, man, there is a national suicide and crisis lifeline. Um, and all you have to do is dial 988, and that connects you to basically a 24/7 crisis line. And it provides free and confidential support for people who are struggling. And so that number is 988. If you are in South Dakota, there is a helpline that is 24/7 as well. And all you have to do is dial 221. That's within South Dakota. And you'll be immediately assisted as well. And within South Dakota, there is a lot of counselors, there's a lot of behavioral clinics. There's a lot of people who want to help. There's a lot of nonprofits that help in this area too. And so, yeah, just like if you're struggling, you live in South Dakota, 212. If you're from somewhere else, 988. And so that would be what I would say. So going back to the hurt people. It's been difficult to walk through the situation and listen to different narratives, listening to people who are reactive and not being responsive, and it just makes me think of like how to handle confrontation. When we look at confrontation, a lot of times we think, oh man, this is not healthy. But there is a such thing as like healthy confrontation. And healthy confrontation is not bad. Confrontation is not bad if it's done in a healthy manner. Even if the other person's coming at you in a certain way, like as long as you're healthy and you can hold your ground, yeah, it's gonna help. And so I have some pointers that I would like to give out in regards to dealing with confrontation. There's really two thought processes here. Is like how do you diffuse tense situations, or how do you diffuse escalating conversations, and then the other one is just conflict resolution. And so I'm gonna give you 5 tips on each one. And then I do also have 2 Bible verses that I want to briefly speak on as well. And so, yeah, I just feel like I've been dealing with so much confrontation lately. It's like a daily thing. And I want to share some of my thought process. So I want to share some of my thought processes with y'all. I mean, number one for me is like really being willing to stay calm. calm and really composed. Um, and I think I've talked about this before, is like when you're calm and composed, you're thinking logically instead of emotionally. Even though like the tensions are high, you're able to put your emotions, or I mean your thought processes, above your emotions and think logically. And I think that's so important. So that's the first thing. Number two is just listening actively, and not listening to respond, but really just listening, to listen. And I think part of listening is asking questions, which I think I've talked about in a previous podcast, which is really asking questions to um, dig deeper, and listening actively to dig deeper within those conversations. Um, I think, like, in all reality, and I do this all the time, is number three is just like really emphasizing, like saying, okay, hey, I'm sorry where, like, I'm sorry where, uh, well, I can't speak. I'm sorry that you're going through that. Like, man, that stinks. Um, and really emphasizing with the person so that they feel heard, that they feel valued, and that they feel supported. Um, and um, yeah, number four is, um, like, this is a counseling trick, but like use the I statements. Like, I feel like when you do this, or um, like you can say like I'm concerned about this, instead of like, yo, when you do this kind of thing. And so it's the I statements, bringing it back to you of like, hey, I'm concerned about some of these behavioral things. Like, I'm concerned about um, the way that you're treating me right now, instead of like, oh, you're treating me this way. Um, yeah, and then the fifth point is really to set boundaries, and that's healthy. Like, you can set boundaries within the conversation, like right off the bat. Like, I'll be honest, I'm in a difficult conversation with somebody who was really trying to come at me in a certain way because of a certain situation. And it's a little comical because, like, the person is young and he is trying to prove something to me. And I'm not going to get into the difficulties of it. Um, but like, I started off with just asking questions, trying to get a better understanding of the situation and where he's coming from. Um, and at some point, I was just like, um, I'm not gonna tell y'all how I said it because he's younger than me, so I kind of went into the whole dad talking to a son mode. But I just basically set the boundaries. I'm like, hey, if you want to call me and you want to talk face to face or talk on the phone, we can do this. But the boundary is, you're not going to waste my time, and I'm not going to get in a keyboard battle with you over something that you're frustrated at me for. Um, and and so I think it's healthy to set boundaries, um, and not like dig into that. Understanding, and here's a bonus one: understanding how you operate within difficult conversations will help too. Um, and I would also say practicing, man, like, if you can practice difficult conversations with people, and keep your emotions in check. Like recently, I was in a conversation and with someone that the tensions got high, and I was calm the whole time, And I would say when I was married, I could not do this. And I think going through years of counseling and really going on a healing journey and praying to God has helped me. But like, I told one of my friends about it, and I was like, "Hey man, I was calm, I was collect the whole time, even though I was frustrated." Um, like you could see me, like I could see myself physically shaking because of frustrations, but like I didn't yell. I kept like a stern but yet graceful, grace-giving voice. I asked questions. I used I statements. Um, and I even emphasized and try to understand where this other person was coming from, and I try to listen actively as well. I'm not saying I was perfect at it, but I tried. And so putting myself in those kind of situations where it's like high escalated situations and dealing with confrontation right off the bat. Now the other part of the conversation is I want to give y'all tools to de-escalate de-escalate conversations. This one's heavy on me because I've been doing this a while. Something that I learned um, that I'm learning is that there are a lot of people who want to be keyboard warriors, especially on social media. Um, and like for me, if someone is commenting on something, if someone is um, making a controversial statement on my social media page, like the first thing I do is DM them. I make the conversation private. And I think we live in such a day and age where everything's on social media, where we see our national leaders going after people and attacking people. Um, but for me, it's like, no, go to that person in private. Um, and so when it comes to diffusing confrontation, um, you know, the first thing is that you want to communicate effectively. And that goes back to the I statements and listening, active listening. Um, and then another part of that is like clarifying the phrase. So like if someone said, um, like, um, when you did this certain thing, it made me feel this way. And so if I was in this conversation, I'd be like, so correct me if I'm wrong, but what I hear you saying is like when I did this, it made you feel this way. Is that correct? And they'll be like, yes or no. And then I'll come back and say, okay, now that I got that, are you willing to hear from my perspective? Because like a mentor of mine put it this way. He put it this way. He's like, everybody's perspective is their reality, right? So I have a different perspective than you listening. I have a different perspective than my guests that are on this podcast. And so because of that, my different perspective is my reality, where their different perspective is their reality. And so part of it is a matter of understanding effectively and considerately other people's perspectives. And then once we're trying to understand it, then we're able to come down to a conclusion. Um, and so communicating effectively, and just like I think the biggest thing in that, like the three big things in that, is active listening, using those I statements, but most importantly, like clarifying and like rephrasing what they're saying so that you can actually understand that. I think another a big one that a lot of people um, don't understand is that when conflict happens and you're trying to diffuse it, a lot of people want to attack the person instead of attack the issue. And so it's one of those things where it's like, no, like, listen, I'm here to diffuse the issue. I have no ill intentions towards you. I'm just here to diffuse the problem. Now, if someone's being the problem, I've been in positions where I have to step in and be like, hey man, you are, like, I don't say this, but like, be like, hey, what's going on in your mind? What's the problem here? Like, how can I assist you? What do you need? Um, and so, and sometimes just like someone's presence can diffuse a situation real quickly. Um, and so like focus on the issue, not the person. Don't attack the person. Attack the issue in a healthy manner. Um, Third is explore solutions. Figure out solutions. I think sometimes like people, like, they'll embrace confrontation and react, or instead of respond, and they're not providing solutions. And I'm about solutions. I'm about, let's get down to business. Let's figure out how we can make this better. Let's figure out how we can grow. Like, let's figure out how we can grow and go. Let's grow together so that we can go together. Um, yeah. Number 4, this one's can be difficult sometimes, but managing emotions. Now, let me tell you this: you're not responsible for, like, if you're having a confrontation with somebody, you're not responsible for their emotions. You're not responsible for them. You're responsible for your emotions. You're responsible for what comes out of your mouth and how you say things, whether it's you're reacting or you're responding. You're responsible for that. I think in some ways you're responsible for um, maybe guiding them through their emotions and through their thoughts. But if they feel a certain way, usually how the conversations that I have when it comes to diffusing situations, it's like for example, a conversation that I brought up where it was pretty intense, and they were getting emotion, and I was like, I just want to let you know that, like, the way that you're feeling is not wrong. You have every single right to feel the way that you feel. Every single right. I'm not going to speak to that. But what I'm going to speak to is this, this, and this. Can we have this dialogue, even though you're in this state of mind? And so for me, it's like, I acknowledge those emotions. And even though I'm not responsible for them, but I need to acknowledge them, and I need to make sure that person is okay. Now, I'm not walking on eggshells around them, like, um, Julian's, who was on the podcast, his wife said this, like, I triggered her. I said a statement that triggered her. And she told me, she was like, you're not responsible for my triggers. I am. And that changed my whole perspective, because I feel like once we trigger someone, it's immediately like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, because that person's triggered. And then we get in this victim mentality. And like, for me, I'm not about that. For me, like, ever since I learned that, I'm just like, oh, I'm not responsible for your triggers, but I am responsible of what I say and how I can have this conversation with you. And I need to take ownership of every single word that comes out of my mouth, and not just every single word, but also every single action that comes out of my mouth as well. Um, and it's okay to take breaks. And the last thing too, when it comes to de-escalation within conversation, is like, there is nothing wrong with mediation. there's been conversations where I've had to be a mediator between two parties because they couldn't do the conversation on their own, and it was healthy. Both sides walked away with a understanding, a better understanding of each other. Both sides walked away with some clarity in mind. Um, and am I the best at mediating? No, but this was one of my good friends that was really struggling, and I'm like, hey, I am willing to sit down with you and go to bat for you and advocate for you and mediate this conversation. And let me tell you, after that conversation, because there was so much spiritual weight in that conversation, I went home and I took the longest nap. I think I slept. Like, I went home and I just went to bed because it was so heavy. And so, um, that's what I would say. I'm getting super tired, so I'm not going to repeat those things. But I do want to share like a couple of things that I've been going through in regards to my friend missing and some of the drama that's surrounding the situation. It makes me think of Matthew 18, 15 through 17. If your brother or sister sins, go and point out their fault just between the two of you. If they listen to you, you have won them over. But if they will not listen, take one or two others along. If they still refuse to listen, take them to the church. Now, I know that there's more that I need to say to this, because I feel like, yeah, it's 15 through 20, not 15 through 18. There's so many people that rather go straight to posting, having the conflict in public instead of private. And for me, I'd rather have the conflict in private than in public. Not because I'm ashamed of what I'm going to say, but it protects that person and it also protects me. And so I'm going to read this to you, and I'm going to go through verse 20. If your brother, so this is Matthew 18, 15 through 20. If your brother or sister sins, go and point out their fault just between the two of you. If they listen to you, you have won them over. But if they will not listen, take one or two others along, so that every matter may be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. If they still refuse to listen, tell it to the church. And if they refuse to listen, even to the church, treat them as you would a pagan or tax collector. It's pretty harsh. Truly I tell you, whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Again, truly I tell you that if 2 of you on earth agree about anything they ask for, it will be done for them by my Father in heaven. For whether 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there I am with them. And so, like, for me, when I deal with confrontation, someone writes a nasty comment, I'll go to them in private. And then usually I just skip the second part because it's just not worth my time. But if there's an issue that I do have with someone, I will go to them directly. If that issue doesn't change, then I would bring another brother into that issue. If that doesn't change, and I feel like it needs to go to church, I'll do that. But if it still doesn't change, then it's just like, all right, I know where you stand. I know where you're at. And this is what our relationship's going to look like going forward. And like I was alluding to earlier, is that like people just rather jump to like, oh, there's confrontation. We're going to bring them to the social media church and we're going to blast this conversation or what they did on social media instead of going to them directly. Now, this is specifically for believers, but I do believe that there is a context that we can use for the general public. So like for me, it's this. You write a nasty comment or you say something that just tastes awful to me. Or you disrespect me or something like that. I will pull you to the side and I will say, hey, I don't appreciate what you said, or hey, what you made me, I feel like when you did this is what I feel like when this happened. And I'll address the situation. If it doesn't change, then I'll bring one of my homies with and be like, hey, bro, like we talked about this. I don't appreciate this. This is still happening. And then if it continues to happen, I know where you stand. I know where you're at. And I will remove myself from the situation. And I will treat you like a pagan or whatever. And I think I'm more grace giving than a lot of other people are, but that's just me. And then the other thing is being called out. Proverbs 27:5-6. Better is open rebuke than hidden love. Wounds from a friend can be trusted. Like for me, I acknowledge, like I give certain people permission to speak into my life and to speak into who I am. And if I'm doing something stupid, they have the right to call me out on it. Because I rather get the wound from a friend than a hidden love. And that hidden love can watch me sin or watch me do something stupid and not call me out for it. I have friends that will call me out in private. And so, don't invest in the drama. Don't give yourself time to do that. Because it takes away from other more important things. And so I am getting so tired. I'm sorry that this is it's a late night podcast. I'm emotionally tired. I'm exhausted. Physically, I'm just tired too. And so I'm just going to end it here. I feel like I have more to say, but I'm just not at a place where I can verbalize it more. And so for those of y'all that are close to the situation, continue just to pray for me, pray for the family, pray for both sides of the family, because there's hurt, there's pain, people want answers. And so yeah, and then pray for me too if you have time. If you want to send me an encouraging message, that'd be awesome too. I'm a words of affirmation guy. So but for those of y'all that have been listening, I want to say thank you. And yeah, I'm gonna end this. Okay, yawn first. Big yawn. Thank y'all so much for tuning in to the Father Built podcast, where we build up fathers in holiness, healthiness, and happiness, giving these fathers the tools to build their house of legacy. I'm your host, Bobby Peacock, and always remember, peace, love, blessings. We out.